Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are doing educational interviews for Mental Health Awareness Month. And today I'm super excited because I have Dr. Teresa Rogers with me from the Relationship Center. And TRC is a huge advocate and supporter of Light After Loss, our survivors. And so I'm super excited for this interview. I think it's going to go great, and we're going to be talking about, I think, an important topic. So welcome. How are you?
Hello, we're good. It's 5:30. We made it through yet another fun day. So here we are.
Here we are. Yay. Celebrate the small victories.
Yes,
right?
it's sunny outside.
So talk a little bit about the Relationship Center, give some history there, because I have been referring to the Relationship Center for quite a while.
Yes.
And even I think before you were there. So give me some history on TRC and then how you got to be there.
So back in 2005, Dr. Elise Bartley, who has been in Stark County for a very, very long time, she opened up the Relationship Center. She was also a professor at the University of Akron. She was my master's level internship supervisor. So she's been around in the community of mental health for a very long time. So she opened the Relationship Center in 2005. And I joined the Relationship Center in 2013. So I had already had her as my supervisor. We were working together, and she was like, hey, why don't you come to TRC? And so I joined in 2013. Been working here exclusively. And then in 2017, Dr. Bartley was always about making different level system changes. So first you make system level change on a small scale, like with one or two people. Then you make it on the medium scale, and then you make it on the large scale. So she had already been doing her work on the small level scale. Then she was doing her work in schools at the medium level and starting a private practice, medium level change and impact. And then her goal was always to get to that large scale. So in 2017, she moved to Florida and opened up a marriage and family therapy program at Florida Gulf Coast University to make that large system change and train more marriage and family therapists, which is an amazing avenue and license and specialty area. So she moved in 2017 and sold me the business then. So I took over in 2017, and we've been rocking and rolling ever since. So that's why you know of TRC pre-me.
Yes, and she was one of my professors as well, because I was an MFT back in the day. Yeah, and so she really started the MFT, practice here. And anytime anybody had asked me for couples counseling or family counseling, I was like, yes, the Relationship Center. So I was always referring, especially in this area in Stark County, it was the place to go for like marriage and family therapy. So can you touch on the marriage and like the MFT, the marriage and family therapy piece? I know most people, I just need to come to a counselor. Is there a difference? What is the difference? Why MFT?
Yes, so there's a difference, and you get lost in like the letter soup after people's names and licenses. And so here at the Relationship Center, everybody here has 2 licenses. We're all dual licensed. We all have our individual counseling license, and that training is for pretty much specifically individual symptoms, treatment, mental emotional disorders from a very individual perspective. And then 4 out of the 7 of us also have our marriage and family therapy license. And so the marriage and family therapy component is more system-based. So all of us individuals live within the world of systems. We are connected to systems everywhere we go. And so even if you were to come to counseling as an individual, you're still living in a system. Your family, your friends, your kids, your partner, your work, everybody, your environment, everything is a system. And so we do a lot of exploration about how you as an individual are impacted by the systems that you're in and how you impact your systems. And then also from we do a lot of couples work, we see lots of relationships. And so again, from that systemic perspective of the lens we're looking at the couple in, we're looking how partner A is impacting partner B, and how if partner B then impacts partner A, and how we are kind of flowing off of each other, just versus the individual perspective of like, okay, this person's symptoms are this person's symptoms in a vacuum, because they're not. They're very much impacting their partner. And then from the family therapy perspective, now we're adding children to the mix. We're adding more members to the mix of, now we got 5 people sitting in a room. We're all like impacting one another systemically, and taking consideration of all of those dynamics are very important. And so that's the difference between a marriage and family therapist and maybe like a clinical counselor, the just different areas of specialty and training and theory in which we work with our clients and create change for them.
I couldn't have said it better. That was awesome. I love it. Which kind of leads us, before we get there though, you didn't always work with couples. What is some of your history in the mental health world? What did you do before you landed at TRC, and how did that journey change along the way?
I was at the University of Akron. I had been doing, it was a lot of couples and families there, and then my internship took me wherever I could get hours, because that's what you do. You collect hours for internship. I did a little while up at the Cleveland Juvenile Detention doing suicide assessments. I did a little while in some in-home work up in Cleveland, so meeting people at their homes, working with them in their homes. I did most of my work at Community Services, or ComQuest now. I did school-based mental health. I was the lead therapist for one of the alternative schools. So we did lots of group and individual work there. And then I also did office-based work at ComQuest. And so that was kind of where I was dabbling, from schools to kids to individuals. Couples were always my jam. I love working with couples. It's chaotic, but I love it. So they're probably one of my favorite populations to work with.
Yeah, and being the dual license, I was also a clinical counselor. I had the LPCC and the MFT, and I was the opposite. The MFT and working with couples, this is too much chaos for me. I'm gonna do the individual level. So I think that as baby counselors, as I call them, that's what you do. You kind of find your niche. Mm-hmm. Like, what is it that really fills me up as a therapist? I have to love this job, otherwise I'm going to get burnt out. So finding something that really does fill you up as far as a therapist is concerned. So that is a great story. I love that. So which brings us to why we are here. We are currently in a stay-at-home order in some sense. We are slowly reopening, but in the middle of a pandemic, and stuck with that system and all of the systems 24/7 in some cases. And I think there's a lot of romanticizing. We should be picking up another language. We should be learning a new skill. We should be bonding with the people that we don't see every day. We're trying to take advantage of the shutdown, which I agree in some sense, but I'm always a big advocate of quality versus quantity, and being stuck with your partner or your children or your systems 24/7, 7 days a week is hard. And as therapists, I think we always kind of keep it real that, yeah, that sounds great, but here's the reality of staying with your people all of the time. So how is the pandemic affecting couples and what you're seeing come through your door?
Well, I would say, so kind of as I talked about the micro and macro system a little bit, we are living in macro system stressors right now. The culture, the community, the environment, these macro level, and then we're also living in our microsystem stressors of family and schooling from home and partners and all of that micro stuff that is still going on along with the macro. So we've got a lot of pressures being put on ourselves. And so looking at how that impacts systems, your body is a system. Your relationship between your brain and your body is one system right there. And sometimes we just need to start right there. Then another system goes from like our bodies to our environment and the way we relate to our partners and our kids, and then how we relate to our community and how we relate to our culture. So all of those kind of systems that which we're relating, we have to kind of go through and work with them a little bit, especially when we're under this whole amount of pressure. So what I've been really seeing is this extra heavy macro system pressure is throwing us all out of whack, because we're not used to thinking about these types of things that we have very little control over, except for our microsystem and ourselves, essentially. So what I'm seeing a lot of couples is stress. And with stress comes our body's response to stress. And so typically, we have 4 ways of responding to stress. When we feel pressure, stress, trauma triggers, anything heavy like that, our brain kind of switches out of its like logical thought zone, kind of switches into where our like survival response is, which is back down deeper in our midbrain. And we kind of come back out with this fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, are pretty much our 4 survival skills. And so I'm seeing a lot of couples learning a lot about one another in close quarters of what their survival response is. Are they a fight person, a flight person, a freeze, or a fawn? And then how do you respond to that? If my partner is kind of in a fight space, how am I responding to that? Because I also have a stress response, and I also have a way of managing that and my response to when I'm feeling under more stress or under attack. So I'm seeing a lot of kind of new dynamics that there were other coping skills where people were able to be like, okay, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go to work. That's a great flight response is I'm going to work. Let me focus on work. I got to work, work, work. Problem is, work for a lot of us is like going upstairs or going downstairs. It's not going too far. So I'm seeing a lot of new developments and kind of clashes related to kind of stress responses.
Yeah, so it's learning how to interact with each other 24/7 and learning your own response and learning how to respond to somebody else's response. There's like a lot of learning. On top of stress, there's just learning how to, in some sense, survive and, still function as a family and still be able to take advantage. Yes, we're spending all of this time together and it is good, but making it quality time where, I know my response in some sense, being able to take care of yourself and take care of each other in those responses. So how does a couple where do you begin with all of that? Okay, I'm just reacting and responding. So now how do couples navigate all that?
So first is to kind of, I think, start understanding insight and education is good. Let's collect some knowledge and some data first. So start to assess yourself. What is my go-to stress response? So think about, so if fight is yours, you might notice that it's this like self-preservation at all costs, or more you're angry or temper or like yelling, aggressive, intense. I'm moving towards you in an aggressive way to get you to go away, to get you to be afraid and push back. So if that yields itself to you, you might have more of a fight response. Another option would be your flight. That is kind of more anxiety, panic. You feel more disconnected. You take a step back. You want to go into another room. You want to go out the door. You want to go to work. You want to go to the gym. These people are like the can't sit still type. I'm always busy. I'm always doing something. I'm micromanaging people. Like that's more of a flight response. So that kind of resonates with you. Freeze is another response. That one's a little bit more like shut down. So if you're seeing that you or your partner is just disconnected, spaced out, feels like unreal, dissociated a little bit, kind of brain fog, I can't really make decisions, that's more of a freeze response. And the last one is a fawn response, which is people pleasing. Yes, make this go away. I'm so sorry. I should have never said that. I would never do that again. Please make this stop. Saying whatever you need to do. You're a people pleaser. You're placating. You are trying to make everything right for everybody else just to like make the discomfort end. And so really our brain doesn't know the difference of whether my partner is frustrated at their work, but I'm perceiving it as it's an attack on me. And an attack on me is pretty much like a tiger is coming to kill me. So I need to respond. I have to have one of these 4 responses to like make this stop. And so really the first step is assessing yourself when you're calm. What am I? What is my first response? And seeing, okay, maybe I have more of a fight response, but my partner has more of a flight response. And I might know that because I might jump at my partner, and then I'm noticing my partner is like going to the other room, and then I'm following my partner and I'm still yapping, and then they're going over there and I'm following. So then you start to notice, okay, this is my go-to, and there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing to be ashamed about. There's not a right one and there's not a wrong one. So
and I love that you just said that, because I think people are it's going to be one more thing to fight about is, oh, well, I've got the right response.
Yes.
So knowing there is no right or wrong, it is what it is.
Yes, and these are amazing things. They keep you alive. We don't want to shame our brain for having these responses, because without these responses, we need to be here. We would not survive the lion attack. So these are amazing things that our brain does for us. These are gifts. So don't minimize it or shame it or make it bad. There is not a right or a wrong. They are all just survival. So it's just knowing this is more me. This is more how I go about kind of keeping myself alive. And so that's a very amazing thing. So we need to be gracious for it, and we need to understand it. And the more friendly we can be with our fight response, our flight response, the more we're able to interact with our partner and with the people around us, and understanding that they have one too. And the key here is when they're having a response, it's not about you. They're not hearing you. They're barely talking to you. They're not interacting with you. It has nothing to do with you. This is just their stress response. So when they calm down, then they're back in their frontal lobe. They're talking rational again. It's okay. But they have one, you have one, and it's okay. We just need to kind of ground and slow down so that we don't have to be kind of, as we say, firing from the midbrain.
Right. Yeah, and being able to know, that letting go of the right and wrong, letting go of the fact that this is really just an innate response, that there's really not a whole lot of control. Once that is fired, it is what it is, and you just have to work to either let your partner calm down or let yourself calm down so you can kind of re-engage. So for those who are tuning in, I do have the Fight, Flight, Freeze, Fawn PDF that I will attach and put into the presentation, and also as a link so you can look at it and kind of educate yourself. Knowledge and insight, yes, very important. I think the key to creating change, you can't change what you don't know. So because when I was a marriage and family therapist, one of the biggest struggles, and it even kind of goes back to what I said, it's one more thing to fight over. What do you do when it's not my problem, it's theirs? So you have to
fix them, please.
Yes, I'm coming in because I need you to fix my husband. And what you said at the very beginning, you can only control essentially yourself. So how do you, say your partner has a flight response and they disappear for 2 hours, and you're more of a fight response, and you're like, you need some resolution and you want to fix it right then, right there, and you're on totally opposite ends. Like, how do you address the opposites and knowing that you can only control yourself?
Right. So first step is that self-awareness. This is what's going on with me. If you know that ahead of time, you can start putting some things in place and some self-talk in place, and maybe, I want to blow your mind, some communication with your partner in place beforehand that when you know that your partner's a flight and I'm a fight, that that person needs that time. But you know what? They're not going to go forever. And that is the key of all of it. It comes back to attachment, and a lot of us have abandonment issues in our past. And so that attachment, what happens when we have a flight and we're a fight? That person goes, and our brain tells us, I'm never going to see that person again. They're gone forever. And I can't sit with this uncomfortable feeling in my body for one more second. So I'm going to chase them. And even if I'm not getting positive things back, at least I'm connected. At least they are there. And so the key is self-soothing. I know that I'm going to be okay. I know here's my skills on how I ground myself. I breathe, I go stand outside, I change my sensory experience, I chew ice. Whatever it takes to change a sensory experience in your body to start bringing you back into the here and now with the messages of, I'm okay, I can do this, I'm going to get through this, this won't last forever, is so very important. And if you have had this conversation ahead of time, maybe your partner can be like, I gotta go, I'll be back in 2 hours. Right there changes a world of difference, because I can handle this for 2 hours, this can be okay, which right there calms you down. But if your partner can't say that at that moment, for you to know that they will come back, they will return, I will be okay. And so ideally communication ahead of time is helpful, so that you guys have a plan, you know what you're going to do, you know what to expect, so that your brain isn't playing absolute worst case scenario and then you kind of keep chasing. If you don't have that communication ahead of time, then it comes right back to you. How do I ground? How do I get out of my midbrain, my fight, flight, freeze? How do I get back into my frontal lobe, my rational, thoughtful brain? And really the key, the secret, when your heart rate goes over 95 beats per minute, you're pretty much flooded. You're pretty much headed for that fight, flight, freeze. You can bring your heart rate back down under 95 beats per minute. Usually takes maybe 20 minutes, a little bit longer. You're calm. You have your frontal lobe re-engaged. You're able to think through it and be like, okay, I can do this. I can calm down. So the key is getting control of that body, which, remember, that's a system, your brain and your body. We got to get those suckers in sync together. And amazingly, that comes with breath work. That just comes with deep breathing. Will slow your heart rate down.
Which is a perfect lead-in, because I always like to bring in, you know, my personal story and stories of loss survivors. So one of the biggest struggles in our house, especially for my oldest daughter, is exactly what you just said, is the flight and the fear of this person is going to leave, this person is not coming back. And it's one of the biggest challenges, I think, for loss survivors, is they have experienced like the ultimate abandonment in some sense. So that is, you know, that is trauma, and it affects your relationships. It affects my relationship with my oldest daughter. It affects our relationships outside of this house. And anytime there is, you know, that sense of abandonment, this person is not going to come back, is, you know, immediately a trigger. And now we have learned that it is a trigger, and there is a flooding process, and rocking in a rocking chair, taking a walk around the house. We do yoga and breathing in order to kind of bring that back down, because my oldest daughter will say once her Wi-Fi is off, because I think that's very relatable for kids. My Wi-Fi is off, that there's no convincing her that I'm not going anywhere, or that I'm ever going to leave or abandon her. And so a conversation is absolutely useless until she gets that kind of that fight or flight response kind of under control. So knowing, even if it's not, you know, a couple, if it's your children, if it's you, whatever, knowing that response and how to get it back down is imperative. And being able to know, you know, not everything is going to be a worst case scenario, even though as survivors, we have lived through that worst case scenario.
And I think as lost survivors, in future relationships, being able, like, that it's trauma. So like that's a very vital conversation to be having with your future partner of, this is a trauma response for me. So I'm going to need that reassurance, and we need to have an action plan, because we're gonna fight. We're gonna have these issues. You're gonna get activated. I'm gonna get activated, and that's okay. But we need to be able to have an action plan put in place ahead of time so that I can be offered the reassurance that I need, that you're only gonna go for 2 hours. And then you're going to come back, and I can rely on you coming back, and having that sense that you can do now your self-work, knowing like, okay, I can trust this person, and I can trust myself, and I can de-escalate. And so reassurance is a vital component of any relationship, especially as a loss survivor, is so important.
Yeah, and convincing or educating loss survivors that this is more than just grief. It is more, you know, in future relationships, there is going to be, in some sense, a trauma response. There may be that response there because abandonment is trauma. And so being able to know and navigate that, and that's why, you know, healing is so important, because this is going to impact your relationships, your future relationships, and being able to know in some sense how, number one, and then healing and being able to navigate that healing process. So your relationships, you know, they may be different. You may have that response, but you know how to navigate it, and there is some healing and healthy relationships on the other side. So can couples come out stronger? Is that something that could happen and during a pandemic? I know, you know, we need to learn a language, we need to learn a skill, we need to go back to school. Can couples come out stronger?
Of course, I believe in couples. I think couples are amazing. They are so resilient. Really, it's kind of like we are learning about each other's survival skills at like the bare, like lowest level of survival right now. And so you're working through something that when you come out, you're going to have a new skill set. You're going to have new knowledge and new appreciation for your partner, I believe. And so one of the things when we were talking about having this conversation, I think an easily accessible thing that everybody could do is working out with the 5 love languages. So you don't have to read the book to know all about it, but there is a quiz online, like 20 questions, super easy. You will post the link to it that anybody can take. You don't have to be in a relationship to take it. You can take it, like there's kid ones, there's teen ones, there's couple ones, and then there's single ones. So all kinds of options. But so what the 5 love languages are ways that you show how you love somebody. If like we don't all communicate it in the same way. So it's a communication style, or literally a language of how I communicate love to you and how I receive love from my partner. And so it's pretty important to know how you communicate love and how you like to receive love, so that you and your partner can kind of be speaking the same language, so to speak. So the 5 ways are physical touch, acts of service, quality time, gifts, and words of affirmation. So to make this like example, I am a acts of service kind of girl. Just like do stuff. Unburden my list. Take something off the list, and I love you forever. And I will do the same for you. I will always check things off your list, because that's the way I communicate love is, vacuum. Or I'll do the laundry for you, and you do this for me. So it's about burdening and unburdening lists for me. However,
my language.
Yes. However, my husband is a quality time kind of guy. So we end up in this little circle of I'm doing things and he's following me around talking at me. And I'm like, would you stop talking and do the dishes? And he's like, would you stop doing the dishes and just talk to me? And so we get in our little circle of like, I do, and he just walks and talks. And so neither one of us are getting our love language met, because he's not doing things and I'm not like paying attention. I'm not giving him my undivided attention, which is what a quality time kind of person wants. And so the key is understanding this. And so now through some work, I know he's quality time. So what do I do to communicate to him that like I love him is to put down the dishes or put down the laundry or put down my phone or pause the TV and talk to him and listen, listen to him and really be engaged in that moment. And so it doesn't have to be long and forever. It just has to be a quality time spent. And so he, in order to show me that he loves me, tries to speak my love language. So I come home and it's like, oh, it's vacuumed. The dishes are done and the laundry's folded. Like, done. Love you. Couldn't be any better. And so once you start to understand what your partner's is, you can start to receive love from them. So like when he actually like really listens to me talk, I'm like, oh, that's you showing me that you love me because you're really listening to me right now. Like I have your undivided attention. And that does feel good. Maybe not as good to me as doing the dishes, but I know that that's him communicating that to me, and that makes me understand it better and really appreciate that. And so the key really is understanding what your partner's is and what yours is, and how when they communicate to you, receive it that way. Be like, you know, if you're not a gifts person, you don't really care about getting gifts, but your partner's a gifts person and they give you all this stuff and you're like, what am I going to do with all this stuff? I don't want this stuff. It costs money. You screwed up the budget. It doesn't make any sense. Take a breath. They're giving you a gift to show you that they love you and that they thought of you and that you're important to them. So, and words of affirmation, very important as well. All the little like attaboys, attagirls, I appreciate you, I love you, you're magical, you're beautiful, little notes everywhere. That's amazing. That makes people, words of affirmation, people feel really, really important. And that touch piece, important. Doesn't mean sex. It just means let me hold your hand, let me rub your back, let me play with your hair, you know, let me just like reach out and touch you. Like that is very important. And so with the positive side, the action, the doing side of the love languages, there's also the negative part. So if you withhold, let's say words of affirmation, I give you no words of affirmation. I say nothing positive. I give you no extra words or appreciation. The lack of it has such a big negative impact that you really feel it, versus if you're not a gifts person and you don't get a gift, you don't really notice. It doesn't really register. But if you're a words of affirmation person and you either get really mean, hurtful words or no words at all, that really, really, really has a giant impact on like, wow, this person hates me. It's not just like doesn't love me, it like hate. Same thing with that physical touch. If you don't get any physical touch or you get hurtful physical touch, that has a very big negative effect and will definitely impact the relationship. And so sometimes if we don't know each other's love languages, we are doing the negative of one that we don't even know is so important to our partner. So when my husband's chasing me around and I'm just annoyed that he's not doing anything and I just ignore him more because now I really got to do the thing, that's really hurtful for him, because now I'm distracted and annoyed and completely engaged over here and not giving him any. I'm like taking away all of the time and communicating that like he's not important. And so like if you don't know these things, it's not like you're intentionally trying to harm your partner, but you can really do good work knowing what your love language is, what your partner's love language is, different ways that you can achieve that. So I would really suggest take the test online. There's also an app. It's called the Love Nudge.
We all love an app.
Right, love an app. So the Love Nudge, you can take a test. You take the test on there too. You can sync it with your partner as well. They can send you little reminders, let you know if their love tank is full that day or if it's not. And like they give you really good ideas of like what you could do. Like, hey, you could mow the lawn. And so like, zoom, send that over to your partner. And like, oh, okay, I could do this. So it gives different ideas. It's fun. It's not like super duper serious, but like it's something to do.
Yeah, and especially as a couple, if you recognize that maybe we're lacking communication, or I don't feel as loved as I used to, being able to have that conversation, kind of the insight and knowledge piece, and doing it together, it's already bringing you together on a, kind of a mission, and just adds to the relationship. So we won't go down this rabbit hole too far, but what I saw was that, especially couples who came in, kind of after an affair, even if it was just an emotional an affair, that it was because of an unmet need, not because that person wasn't doing anything at all. It wasn't, but what that person needed wasn't what that person was giving. A lot of times they were giving their own love language, kind of the acts of service. I'm doing all this stuff. I don't understand how you can say, there's an unmet need. Would you agree with that? Do you see that as well? A lot of times we're doing a lot of things. It's just not the things that are kind of registering with the other person.
Yes, and I would say the landing is just as important as the intent and the message. So our intent is typically good. I don't run into many people who I think that their intention is just bad and to harm their partner. So the intent is always good. The message sometimes can get a little messy, and then the landing is sometimes not anticipated. And so it's important to be mindful, especially if you're trying to repair a relationship, that my intent has to be good. The message has to be clear, and I have to have assessed what the landing is going to be for my partner. So like the acts of service, that's not landing if my partner is a physical touch person. And so I need to be mindful of how that's going to land. So yes, very often, like, you're doing all the things that you can think of because you're you. Your experience is not your partner's experience. And so like I checked all the boxes. Why are your needs not met? Then you get to like, well, I'm never good enough. I could never meet your, like, yes, you can, but we need to have these conversations and be able to really identify what are the needs. And so I like the love languages. I think that it's accessible. No, it doesn't change the whole world. It's not like a systemic theory, but it's accessible, it's easy, it makes sense, it fits into a nice little box that you could just be like, okay, let me start to think about this in a different way of my intent, my message, and my landing. And then like this also applies to kids. Everybody has a love language. So what are your kids' love languages? Maybe you're not speaking their love language and they're not speaking your love language, and that's where the miss is. So if you feel like things are struggling with your kids or you're struggling to connect, take a minute, do the questionnaire with them, do it even for yourself, and be able to see like, okay, maybe my kid is a words of affirmation and I've not been like heavy on the words of affirmation lately. Change that up a little bit and see how they respond. It might really connect with them.
I love the word landing. That is a perfect way to kind of explain, okay, I've done all this stuff and like, is it going to stick? You got to stick the landing.
Yes.
So I love that. I love that word. But to kind of come full circle, the two things that we talked about, the trauma piece, your kind of trauma response, how you're responding and reacting, and the love languages, it really is about knowing yourself and knowing the other person, which comes down to knowledge and insight. And you can't have any of that if you're not communicating. So no matter what you're talking about, it is about knowing yourself and knowing your partner and, okay, how do I adjust? Because I love this person, how am I going to adjust? I am going to go out of my way. So again, to make it a little bit personal, my oldest daughter is a physical touch person. I have a large personal bubble. And so I really have to go out of my way, not because I don't love her or, want to hug her and, have her lay on me for an hour, but it's, it's that physical connection. And I know she feels safe and loved, and that really helps the abandonment issue. The more she's physically connected with me, the safer she feels. So I do that. I'm uncomfortable, because I love her. So doing out of love something that is kind of out of your wheelhouse and doing that on purpose.
Yes.
So how does a couple know that, okay, this is bigger than just learning the love languages or my trauma response? How does a couple know when to ask for help?
well, I think you can ask for help at any time. Like, we love couples who are like fully functioning and just need a little tweak here or there, or a little assessment, you know, all the way to we need to decide, are we getting divorced or not? So we'll work with you on any part of your spectrum. How do you know? I just feel like it's an instinctual thing. Like, you just know when you know sometimes, and like it's just time. And it's a little trickier with couples because both people need to agree to it. It is very hard for us therapists here when partner A drags partner B in and partner B does not want to be there at all. I mean, we're lovely people and we can really usually rope partner B in and they usually buy in, but like it's sometimes a little tricky. Also, if partner A still wants the relationship and partner B is checked out completely, that leads to an impasse. So if we could, you know, get to the couples counseling before we get to that, it typically is a lot more successful. And so I think if you're thinking about it, it can't hurt. It's not going to do any damage. Now, like, it's tough work and we do dig stuff up. We try not to let you leave uncomfortable or unhappy, but like it does dredge some things up, but it's all for the purpose of that stuff's going to come up anyways, or it's going to seep out and come out physically.
It's affecting your relationship whether you're talking about it or not. So
right. And so I think if you're thinking about it, it's always a fair conversation to bring up to your partner of like, hey, what if we tried this? And, you know, see where they're at, plant the seed. Sometimes it's about planting the seed and then letting it grow in the other person's mind a little bit. There's nothing wrong with being like, oh, I was thinking about this. And then just let it be, back off, see what grows over there.
Yeah.
But I think if it's instinctively or intuitively inside of you of like, maybe we should try, then maybe it's time.
Yeah, and I love that fact that I always use the metaphor of the Titanic didn't sink just because it hit an iceberg. There were lots of other things that factored into that tragedy. And that is, you know, the same thing with relationships, that if there is, you know, one or two things that could be tweaked, tweak them now before you hit the iceberg.
Yes.
So going in just for an oil change is okay, and better communication or learning love languages or learning more about yourself so you can know how you respond to your partner. And so all of, you know, I am a big advocate, obviously, for going and talking and just self-improvement. So go before. That was also my experience, that a lot of couples waited until they had the divorce conversation, or there was an affair, or there were just major problems or major icebergs to overcome, where, you know, go in before that happens. And it's not a sign of weakness. Going in can, you know, that's one thing I do believe. If you go in, you come out stronger. So there's no reason not to. It is hard, it is tough, but it's totally worth it on the other side. So what is your biggest advice for couples at this point, or really anybody, when it comes to the pandemic and telehealth and this huge transition we're going through?
My best advice is to give yourself grace. Like, it is so much about grace right now. Give yourself grace, give your partner, your family, the entire world, like just grace. And space is truly something that we just need to allow for ourselves to be and move and flow through this and come back. When you don't know where to go or what to do or what the answer is, you come back to yourself. Take some deep breaths, come back to you, reground in this moment. All we know is what is happening right now. And right now, I'm safe, I'm okay, I can take some deep breaths. And if you can get your breath under control, you can get your body under control. If you can get your body under control, you can make controlled decisions about your relationship, about your family, about the world, about what you're going to do next. But really, you got to have that grounding within yourself first. And so having grace and understanding that everybody, we're all doing this together, creating a schedule and some scheduled time for space for you as an individual, and space and time for you and your partner to be able to like connect and laugh. Imagine laughing, good things, you know, play
Listening and
Yahtzee.
laughing.
I don't care what you do, but like go hide in a closet and play rummy. I don't know, just something that is like, we got 20 minutes for myself here to go for a walk, to go sit in the shower, whatever you need to do for you. So some scheduled space and time for yourself, and some scheduled space and time for you and your partner, because you need something to look forward to. And I know if I have 20 minutes to myself, I look forward to that all day long. Like, that's amazing. So scheduling that to look forward to in there, I think. So grace and a little bit of time and space for yourself and for your relationship is my best advice right now. And when you don't know what else to do, just breathe.
I love it. Speaks to my soul for sure. Speaking, since, you know, people are home and looking for resources, they're going to have, obviously, this interview. I'm going to send them the links to the love languages, the pictures of the trauma responses, and learning a little bit more about that. Are there any other books as far as relationships and connection that, if they do feel like they have the time to read and learn, what would you recommend?
All right, I got 3. I mean, there's lots. So first, you could follow the Relationship Center on Facebook. I post all kinds of fun things, and I'm obsessed with Fiona the hippo at the Cincinnati Zoo. So if you just like hippos, that is also on our Facebook page.
Love it.
Fiona's amazing. The first thing I'm going to do when it's safe, going to Cincinnati to meet Fiona.
That's awesome. Something to look forward to, right?
Right, yeah. So first one, book, How to Rewire Your Brain for Love. This one is all about exactly what we talked about. So kind of the neurobiology of relationships. So that fight, flight, freeze, how your brain is working, how your past and your stress response and all of those things do impact your present and how you interact with your partner in relationships. This is an amazing book. It's super accessible. It makes neurobiology extraordinarily digestible. I love it. I think this is an excellent one. So this is my number 1 choice.
That's on my list.
Good. You'll love it. Number 2, I love Attached, just because I think attachment theory is so, so important. Again, knowing yourself. What's your attachment style? Then what's your partner's attachment style? And that's a whole other theoretical thing. But this, again, is an accessible book and a way to understand attachment and how you interact and relate to other people in this world based off of your attachment.
Read it, love it, recommend it as well.
Yes, the last one that I had in my office was good old Dr. Gottman, The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. This is a good one to do with your partner. If you guys can read through a chapter a day, I mean, talk about it maybe, like sit down and like, oh, what did you think about this? So it kind of works you through different principles that are like bids for connection. So how do you lean into one another instead of lean away from one another? And when I reach out and make a bid for connection, do you see that as a bid for connection, or are you dismissing it or too lost in your own thoughts that you're not noticing that reach out point? So different little things that you can really do. Again, very accessible and easy to read and make sense of. So those are my 3 top picks that were in my office today.
Those are good. Gottman, I feel like that's a little deja vu. It takes me back because I used a lot of Gottman stuff when I was doing MFT and the 4 Horsemen. There's a lot, again, when it comes to knowledge and insight and how relationships work. Gottman has a lot of good stuff out there. That's a really good book. So once again, just appreciate you taking your time and always supporting.
Thank you for this platform. Like, you are amazing and doing this for the world, because the world needs more sunshine.
I appreciate that. The sun is out today, so took advantage of that. Probably going to go out and maybe catch the sunset, because that is also one of my favorite things, and sometimes even go live just to show the sunset.
I watch it.
I love it. So thank you so much, and all your advice and everything you do for the community. Hope that you remain happy and healthy, and at some point we'll, kind of go back to quote unquote normal, whatever that is. There is no normal, but where you're seeing people in your office and sharing your energy and all that fun stuff. So I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to Dr. Teresa Rogers from the Relationship Center for her time and wealth of knowledge. I did put the type of trauma responses in the video as she was reviewing them as promised. The additional graphic here demonstrates the window of tolerance in regards to trauma responses. The ultimate goal is to stay within the window of tolerance. That's when what my daughter would say, her Wi-Fi is connected. I would say my smart brain is working. Going back to what Teresa said, trying to stay below a heart rate of 95 beats per minute. Once you get over that, more than likely you're flooded and some of those trauma responses are going to happen. The impact of trauma is it shortens or squishes that window of tolerance. I'm a survivor of suicide loss, as many of you know, and my window of tolerance was slim to none for quite a while afterwards, until I received trauma-specific treatment and started doing things like trauma-focused yoga and meditation, deep breathing exercises. I wasn't always using my smart brain. Not because I didn't want to, we all want to, just because my Wi-Fi signal was spotty at best. It was the reason I truly thought I was broken. I just couldn't get my trauma responses under control. Light After Loss is a trauma-focused support system for survivors of suicide loss. We recognize the importance of trauma, not only grief, when it comes to the healing journey for survivors. It's difficult to effectively address the grief if our window of tolerance doesn't really allow us to. There is also the link to the Love Languages quiz that she mentioned. Hope you take advantage of that to foster healthy relationships, not only during this time, but always, of course. If you are a survivor of suicide loss and are looking for education, resources, and support, connect with us on social media. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, or simply text, call, or email us. We would love to give you hope for healing. Be well.